Well, I was surprised to discover that. I didn't have that sense, certainly in the latter years of my membership of the committee. But I think that the LGBTI issues as human rights were not well understood for many years. They were perceived somehow as separate and the business of somebody else. Thank goodness we have a much deeper understanding now that violation of the human rights of a person just because they're lesbian, gay or transgender are no less human rights violations. And with that understanding, far more of the members of the Human Rights Committee and the other treaty bodies are willing to raise the issues today. So it may be the case that I did it far more than anybody else in the past, but I think if I were back in the treaty bodies today, the story would be very different. Yeah, well, the situation is quite shocking. We still have 7 countries with the death penalty, nearly 80 countries with criminalisation laws. Frankly, the LGBTI issues, our resistance to protection of the human rights of members of sexual minorities, seems to me to be a proxy for all manner of other repressive patterns in a society. I think you can make an argument that the more repressive a country is with regard to these issues, the less democratic, the less open, the more inclined towards totalitarianism. Well, it's getting much better. It was unacceptable until, let's say, a decade ago. But again, it had to do, as I said, with a genuine lack of understanding. That has changed. We find the issues being raised now as a matter of course, as a normal issue in the treaty bodies by UN special rapporteurs, the so-called special procedures of the Human Rights Council. It's coming up in the framework of issues raised, questions put by states in what's called the Universal Periodic Review. The UN High Commissioners have been doing great work around the issue. So I think the record today is commendable, though that doesn't mean that we can ever take our eye off the issue as a key and central one, and we have to keep ensuring that it's front and centre of human rights advocacy in the UN and elsewhere. In many parts of the world, it's incredibly difficult. It's difficult for many reasons. One is a deep prejudice and intolerance in many societies against the person who is quite simply different to the majority. Closely linked to that, there is very little understanding in society of trans issues. We insist on all manner of hoops for the trans person to go through before they're recognised in the gender identity that they choose for themselves. We require surgery as well as self-identification. Even when the surgery and self-identification tests have been met, there's then endless amounts of paperwork and bureaucracy before official documents will be adjusted. People are required to divorce from a partner. The issues are endless, and there's a tremendous amount of work to be done in educating society about protecting the human rights of trans people in their fullness and on the basis of how they choose to be identified.